Okay. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Nous sommes réunis ici sur le territoire traditionnel non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe. Et cette reconnaissance du territoire témoigne de l'histoire commune des habitants de ce pays. Puissions-nous poursuivre sur la voie de la vérité et de la réconciliation ensemble, par nos gestes autant que nos paroles. It's appropriate that we're gathering this morning at the National Gallery of Canada. A few blocks away from here, at the then Clarendon Hotel, 146 years ago, the first exhibition was held of the Canadian Academy of the Arts. That academy was the dream of the then Governor-General, the Marquess of Lorne, and his wife, Her Royal Highness Princess Louise. They believed that a young confederation needed institutions through which it could see itself and through which it could be seen by the world. 388 works hung in the Clarendon that evening, and those works would become the seeds of this gallery, which today holds more than 17,000 works of Canadian, Indigenous, and global art. Canada was built on the foundations of three peoples: Indigenous, French, and British. Indigenous peoples mapped this continent, sustained its lands and waters, and built trading networks from coast to coast to coast for thousands of years before any European arrival. The French built a society shaped by river and forest, by partnership with Indigenous nations, and by a determination to flourish in a new world. When the British came, that civilization did not disappear. It suffered, but endured, and in time it grew into the federation that we know today. Let's be clear, that founding was imperfect. It excluded too many. It was built in part on the dispossession and broken promises to Indigenous peoples. But that founding contained an insight that has carried us forward. That unity does not require uniformity. That our differences are a strength to be nurtured, not a risk to be managed. That insight has been sustained and then reinforced, generation after generation, by our institutions: Parliament, the courts, the Crown, the treaties, the Charter, the public service, a free press. Grâce à ces institutions, qu'un pays aussi vaste et diversifié que le nôtre parvient non seulement à rester uni, mais aussi à prospérer. Dans un monde plus dangereux, plus divisé et moins civilisé, les institutions sont plus importantes que jamais. A year ago, His Majesty King Charles opened our Parliament with a speech from the throne, the first time in nearly 70 years that Canada's sovereign had done so in person. The Crown is a continuous thread through our constitutional life. It is, as His Majesty himself said, a symbol of Canada in all her richness and dynamism. And the Governor-General is the Crown's representative in Canada, Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces, steward of our traditions of peace, order, and good government. And above all, the Governor-General is the guardian of our constitutional order. The most demanding part of that role is rarely seen. It's the duty to ensure that government in Canada is formed, sustained, and, when the time comes, dismissed in accordance with law and convention. It's a duty that calls for sound judgment, deep learning, and an unwavering commitment to the rule of law. That is the office. And it is the office to which I have asked His Majesty to appoint a Canadian whose entire life has been dedicated to that very principle. I'm very pleased to announce that on my recommendation, His Majesty has approved the appointment of the Honourable Louise Arbour as the 31st Governor-General of Canada. Née à Montréal, Louise Arbour a fait ses études à l'Université de Montréal. Elle a été admise au barreau du Québec en 1971 et au barreau de l'Ontario en 1977. Elle a commencé sa carrière comme chercheuse à Osgoode Hall et comme ardente défenseur des libertés civiles dans notre pays. In 1987, Louise Arbour was appointed to the Supreme Court of Ontario, as it was then known. In 1990, she was appointed to the Court of Appeal for Ontario. In 1999, she was appointed to the Supreme Court of Canada. One of Canada's most demanding judicial careers, more than enough for one lifetime. That career would serve only as the foundation for what came next. Because her most consequential work as a jurist was beyond the Canadian courtroom. In 1996, Louise Arbour was appointed by the United Nations Security Council as Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Tribunals for the former Yugoslavia and for Rwanda, the first international criminal tribunals since Nuremberg. She inherited two institutions that many believed could not succeed. She made them succeed. Under her leadership, the tribunal secured the first conviction for genocide since the adoption of the Genocide Convention in 1948. The Akayesu judgment, which also established for the first time that sexual violence can constitute a weapon of genocide and a crime against humanity. And in 1999, in the middle of a war, she signed the indictment of a sitting head of state, Slobodan Milosevic, for crimes against humanity and violations of the laws of war, something that had never been done before. Un nouveau précédent pour la justice sans crainte ni favoritisme. Il ne s'agit pas là de prouesses techniques. Ces réalisations constituent le fondement de principes modernes, selon lesquels aucune personne, aussi puissante soit-elle, et aucun État, aussi bien protégé soit-il, ne se trouve hors de la portée de la loi. That proposition is the foundation of Canadian citizenship. We're a country whose civic identity is grounded in the universality of rights, that what is owed to one of us is owed to all of us. And what is owed to a Canadian is owed, in our tradition, to every human being, whether or not they have the great good fortune to live here. In 2004, Louise Arbour left the Supreme Court of Canada to become United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. For 4 years, she gave voice to those whose dignity was denied, in places where the powerful preferred silence. She did not flinch, and she never confused being heard with being safe. Il existe un troisième fil conducteur dans la carrière de Madame Arbour. Celui-ci est moins souvent évoqué, mais tout aussi important. À 3 reprises, on lui a demandé d'examiner de près une institution qui avait manqué à ses obligations envers les personnes dont elle était responsable et de définir les mesures nécessaires pour remédier à la situation. En 1995, Mme Arbour a présidé l'enquête sur la prison des femmes de Kingston, dont le rapport a contribué à moderniser les pratiques carcérales pour les femmes au Canada. En tant que haut commissaire, elle a exhorté le système de droits de la personne des Nations Unies à montrer digne des personnes qu'il prétendait servir. En 2022, après avoir mené un examen externe et indépendant, a de rédiger et déposer un rapport sur l'inconduite sexuelle dans les forces armées canadiennes. Ce rapport, dont les recommandations sont actuellement mises en œuvre, va redéfinir la justice militaire canadienne. Her work matters in and of itself. It also tells us something about what Louise Arbour will bring to Rideau Hall. The conviction that institutions are the load-bearing walls of a civil society, and that they remain trustworthy only as long as someone is willing to hold them accountable. Louise Arbour has held nearly every office a Canadian jurist can hold, and several that no Canadian has held before. She has been recognized with nearly 100 honours and awards, including 42 honorary doctorates from universities around the world. She is a companion of the Order of Canada, our country's highest civilian honour. But the measure of her career is neither in the offices she has held nor the awards she's received. It's in the lives she has changed through her service. Survivors of genocide who saw justice in their lifetimes. Women in prisons in Canada whose conditions were improved because she said what no one else would say. Members of our armed forces who can serve today with greater dignity because of the report that she wrote. Des millions de personnes dont les droits sont mieux protégés parce que quelque part, une institution que Louise Arbour a contribué à bâtir a effectué son travail. Des millions d'autres, grâce au précédent et aux normes qu'elle a établies. C'est cela, le service dans son sens le plus vrai. Un service non pas rendu à fonction, mais à des principes. Across more than 5 decades, in every role she's held, the Honourable Louise Arbour has carried the same conviction, that a free society depends on institutions properly being held to account, that the law stands between power and the powerless, that the dignity of every person should not be a product of the accidents of geography, citizenship, or convenience, and that Canada's place in the world is to be a country that lives those propositions and helps others to live them as well. A deeply Canadian conviction, one that's older than our charter and broader than our borders. It runs through our public life, from the person's case to the patriation of our Constitution, from the building of Medicare to the building of the United Nations. C'est la conviction qu'une communauté est plus que la somme de ses membres. Ce sont les institutions, les traditions et les engagements à travers lesquels nous choisissons de vivre ensemble. C'est ce que Louise Arbour a consacré sa vie à défendre et à définir. C'est ce qu'elle apportera à la fonction qu'elle s'apprête à assumer. Now, before I conclude, let me observe that Madame Arbour will succeed an exemplary Governor-General. Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Mary Simon, has been a steadfast representative of Canada and our institutions at home and around the world. As the first Indigenous person to serve in this role, she's carried forward a lifetime of advocacy for Inuit rights, for Indigenous self-determination, and for the preservation of our Indigenous languages, cultures, and identities. Elle nous a rappelé que la réconciliation est une responsabilité à vivre chaque jour dans notre manière d'écouter, d'apprendre et d'agir. De plus, Madame Simon s'est fait la championne de l'alphabétisation et de l'éducation, qu'elle considère comme les fondements de l'autodétermination. Son leadership a aussi contribué à mettre l'enjeu de la santé mentale au haut de notre agenda national, en particulier dans les communautés nordiques et autochtones. Elle a su mettre en lumière des difficultés trop souvent négligées. Elle a ainsi donné une voix à tant de gens qui souffrent et qui sont trop souvent ignorés. Son héritage perdurera non seulement grâce au service qu'elle a rendu, mais aussi grâce à la manière dont elle s'est acquittée sa mission, avec élégance, détermination et une foi inébranlable de notre pays. To Her Excellency Governor-General Simon, to His Excellency Whit Fraser, to your family, thank you for your extraordinary service to Canada. At a time when much of the world is buffeted by crises and the worst are full of passionate intensity, Canada's history, our institutions, and our enduring traditions matter more than ever. We retain our convictions. We reinforce our institutions. As Mary Simon has, Louise Arbour will represent the best of Canada to Canadians and to the world. A country that's a bastion of security, prosperity, and justice, a beacon to a world lost at sea. A Canada that is clear-eyed about the challenges we face and steadfast in the values we uphold. A Canada that's not just strong, but good. A Canada that's not just prosperous, but fair. A Canada that is not just for some most of the time, but for all of the time. Madame Arbour, au nom du gouvernement du Canada et au nom de l'ensemble de la population canadienne, merci d'avoir accepté de servir notre pays une fois de plus. It's my pleasure to introduce the 31st Governor-General of Canada, the Honourable Louise Arbour. Madame.
Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Et Monsieur le Premier ministre, permettez-moi tout d'abord de vous remercier pour cette présentation très élogieuse à mon égard et surtout pour la confiance que vous m'accordez. Je tiens à exprimer ma gratitude à Sa Majesté le Roi pour cet honneur et pour l'occasion qui m'est donnée de servir le Canada à ce titre. Et je souhaite également souligner l'apport extraordinaire de Mary Simon, qui a servi notre pays avec un dévouement indéfectible. Elle a représenté les Canadiennes et les Canadiens avec dignité et compassion. Canada is a wonderful country, shaped by its diversity of people, of perspectives and experiences, but I think shaped also mostly by a common respect for strong public institutions and for the rule of law. Above all, we all strive to provide for each other in a spirit of equality and generosity. I'm very mindful of the legacy that I'm stepping into. J'accepte ces responsabilités avec un sens profond du devoir, à un moment où les Canadiennes et les Canadiens sont confrontés à la complexité et au changement. Conscients de cette réalité, nous nous devons de développer les compétences requises pour y faire face et avant tout, nous nous devons de réaffirmer la confiance que nous avons les uns envers les autres. La force de notre pays réside dans des institutions stables, gérées avec un jugement sûr et une attention soutenue à notre bien-être collectif et à celui de toute la planète. Ce sera un grand bonheur pour moi de représenter le Canada et de célébrer nos réussites. Et ce sera aussi un privilège d'être présente si nous devons faire face à l'adversité. Je suis d'ailleurs pleinement consciente de la responsabilité que je vais assumer à titre de commandante en chef des Forces armées canadiennes. J'ai beaucoup de respect pour le service et le professionnalisme des femmes et des hommes en uniforme et ce sera un immense honneur pour moi de me retrouver parmi eux. Like them, I will strive to serve with honor, dedication and integrity. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, on est prêts, nous deux, pour vos questions.
Thank you. We'll now turn to questions. Première question, Ashley Burke.
Good morning, Madame Arbour. Prime Minister Ashley Burke, CBC News. There's an expense program for former governors generals that allows them to claim up more than $200,000 a year, and that's on top of their expenses. And the reimbursements last year totaled more than $550,000. A Privy Council report in 2019 said there wasn't enough transparency around this, that Canadians should know exactly how that money is being spent and by who, and it called for more transparent public reporting. Do you think this program should continue? And if so, will you commit to ensuring that there is more, the details about how this money is spent and by who will be made public?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I'm not familiar with the details that you're quoting. I'll look into it, ensure that, as you say, that there's adequate transparency around the expenses. I'll just observe that the Governor Generals have served our country with distinction, and in the cases in their post. Time after being Governor General, continue to serve Canadians through their charitable and other foundation activities, for which I'm personally grateful, and I think all Canadians are as well. Thank you.
Do you think that the details of that should be public? And to both of you, what is the Governor General's role right now, do you think, in promoting national unity at a time when it looks like there could be a referendum on separation in Alberta, and as well a party that wants one in Quebec could return to power?
So I'll begin. I think I answered the first part of your second question. We'll follow up with you, with everybody, transparently. In terms of the Governor General represents all Canadians, and I think very importantly represents what's at the heart of our institutions and the spirit of Canada, that we're all equal. The rule of law applies to everyone. The powerful as well as the powerless, that we believe in democracy and the processes. So with respect to the many great strengths of this country, they're as appreciated in my home province of Alberta as they are appreciated across the territories where I was born and across this great land. And the Governor General's role is institutional in the sense of very clear constitutional responsibilities that are called into need from time to time, but also to represent Canada at home, best of Canada to Canadians and abroad.
Next question.
I can only echo first the constitutional role of the Governor General, which I think is a very important part of the function. But beyond that, I think there is a space for the Governor General to be conducive of Canadian dialogue with respect to diverse. I've mentioned the diversity of our people, diversity of views, of opinions, of experiences, but all that, I think, in a spirit of respect and moving the country forward in an ambitious, united way.
Next question, Laurence.
Oui, bonjour, Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. C'est une question pour vous deux. Donc, Madame Arbour, vous êtes francophone. Votre prédécesseur ne parlait pas français. Est-ce que vous pensez que c'était une erreur de la part de M. Trudeau de nommer une gouverneure générale qui, oui, était bilingue, mais qui ne parlait pas français, pour vous deux?
Je peux commencer. Je crois que c'est un bon choix. C'est un bon choix d'avoir l'occasion d'avoir Mme Arbour comme gouverneur général, le 31e gouverneur général. Oui, c'est important d'avoir le bilinguisme au sein du gouvernement, toutes les institutions du gouvernement du Canada.
C'était une erreur de la part de M. Trudeau?
Mme Simon, comme je viens de dire, je viens de commencer à expliquer les contributions de Mme Simon à notre pays. Ils sont très, très importants dans le domaine de réconciliation, la santé mentale et de représenter le Canada à travers le monde. Alors, on va bâtir sur la fondation des 30 dernier gouverneur général du Canada.
Madame Arbour.
J'ai déjà mentionné d'abord que j'ai beaucoup de respect pour toutes les personnes qui m'ont précédé dans ce poste. Ouais. J'ai beaucoup de respect et beaucoup d'admiration pour le travail que Mme Simon a fait. Et évidemment, je n'ai pas d'opinion sur les décisions qui ont porté sur le choix de sa candidature ou franchement de la mienne.
Ouais.
Vous, le M. Carney l'a dit, vous allez représenter la couronne britannique ici au Canada. Est-ce que vous vous considérez comme une monarchiste, Mme Arbour?
Je ne sais pas ce qu'on veut entendre par ce terme-là, parce qu'on l'entend souvent de façon très péjorative. Mm-hmm. Moi, je vais vous répondre de façon juridique et constitutionnelle. Je ne suis pas encore, la représentante de la couronne. Dans une monarchie constitutionnelle de type parlementaire, dans un arrangement constitutionnel qui, à mon avis, a extrêmement bien servi le Canada, surtout dans les années plus récentes, et je suis convaincue que c'est une formule qui va continuer à très bien nous servir.
Prochaine question. Next question. Oh.
Same question, but
forget the question.
Can someone repeat the question in English, please?
Yes. Yeah. Am I a monarchy? Well, I started by saying that this term is unfortunately very often used in a pejorative way. What I can say is that I will accede to a function in which I will be the representative of the Crown in a constitutional arrangement that I think has served Canada extremely well throughout our history, but even more in recent decades. I think a system that will continue to provide continuity in our institutions and our form of governance.
Next question. Prochaine question. Risa.
Good morning. Raisa Patel, the Toronto Star. Prime Minister, you said in your recent trip to Armenia that it's your strong personal view that as the international order will be rebuilt, it will be rebuilt out of Europe. What did you mean by that? Do you see a future where Europe overtakes the U.S. as the center of the world order?
Well, I think there's a direct line to what we're celebrating today. I think we are celebrating the constitutional role of the Governor-General. And other Canadians are celebrating Madame Arbour's willingness to serve in that role, which is a belief in democracy, the rule of law, that we're all equal before that law. And imperfectly, the international system had variants of that. Madame Arbour's part of her very distinguished career was to make sure that those who transgressed in the most egregious ways those rules, norms, standards were prosecuted and brought to justice. That system, as I've observed in the past, and I'm not alone in making these observations, has been greatly weakened and needs to be rebuilt, and rebuilt perhaps in a different way, but rebuilt based on the same principles. And Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, other countries share very firm convictions with those principles, and we will work together to rebuild. And obviously there's a critical mass in Europe of countries, 27 members of the European Union, but then a broader grouping that you saw in that meeting in Armenia, over 50 countries that have some form of association with Europe and either fully support or are moving towards those principles. So that's what I meant by those comments, and I stand by them.
Follow-up.
Alberta separatists say they have more than 300,000 signatures to potentially trigger a referendum vote. What will you do to stop that referendum from winning?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is there's, again, keeping with the discussion today, there's the rule of law, there's the Clarity Act, which has been opined upon by the Supreme Court. Not at the same time when Madame Arbour was sitting on the Supreme Court, but has been the judgment passed there, and any referenda in any part of Canada need to be consistent with that. As you know as well, there's a judicial challenge separately but relatedly by Indigenous nations in Alberta regarding the question. So those processes have to be followed through, but. If you bring it into, so I'm observing that because of the solemnity of the moment that we're observing today and celebrating today, but if you bring it into my day-to-day responsibilities and those of the government, it's to continue to act as we have from the start, which is in the spirit of cooperative federalism, making the country work, making it work for Albertans, making it work for Indigenous peoples, making it work for all Canadians. Thank you.
Next question, prochaine question.
Bonjour, ici Raphaël Pirot du Journal de Québec. Question pour vous deux. Madame Arbour, vous avez déjà, en fait, vous êtes quelqu'un qui n'a pas la langue dans sa poche. Vous avez critiqué le gouvernement de Donald Trump récemment sur les ondes de Radio-Canada. Vous avez dit notamment que l'invasion de l'Iran était de la folie pure. Donc, à ce sujet, je voulais savoir qu'est-ce que la façon que vous pensez que le gouvernement américain va accueillir votre nomination. Et est-ce que vous ne craignez pas de perdre votre liberté de parole avec cette nouvelle fonction?
Alors, écoutez, j'ai occupé dans le passé beaucoup de fonctions comme haut fonctionnaire des Nations Unies, évidemment comme juge à tous les niveaux de la magistrature. Et à quelques étapes, quelques périodes de ma vie, j'étais une citoyenne qui avait sa liberté d'expression absolue. Je suis très, très consciente des contraintes, d'abord, des privilèges et des pouvoirs qui viennent avec certaines fonctions et des contraintes qu'on doit s'imposer en conséquence, et puis je m'accommode très bien de cet environnement. Maintenant, je pense que les gens, les personnalités publiques comprennent également très bien cet environnement, qu'on peut avoir exprimé des opinions dans un certain contexte qui ne sont pas des opinions qu'on va nécessairement mettre en œuvre dans un contexte officiel différent. Alors, je pense que les gens comprennent très bien la différence entre une prise de parole privée et la position qu'on exprime au nom d'un poste et d'une fonction.
Et M. Carney?
J'associais à la belle réponse de Mme Arbour.
D'accord. Et donc, est-ce que vous pensez que le gouvernement de M. Trump va vous tenir en rigueur de cette décision-là de nommer Mme Arbour?
Les États-Unis, comme Sa Majesté le roi a observé il y a une semaine, je crois, il a observé au Congrès avec un grand applaudissement que les États-Unis est un pays fondé sur le droit, la règle du droit, des droits humains. Et ça, c'est le même principe dans une manière canadienne que nous renforçons aujourd'hui. Alors, ça, c'est ma réponse. Well, in English, I think you understood the question. So, as His Majesty King Charles observed just last week when he spoke before Congress to great applause, that the United States is a country founded on the rule of law, the right of individuals, and this is what we are reinforcing, celebrating today, an institution at the core of our constitutional system, with someone whose entire career has been dedicated to those principles, coming into such a responsibility at a crucial time. Thank you.
Prochaine question. Next question.
Hi, good morning. Cameron Ryan with CPAC. My question is to Madame Arbour. You authored a report 4 years ago on sexual assault in the Canadian Armed Forces, and you issued 48 recommendations stemming from your investigation. In the 4 years since then, have you seen any progress in how the military treats sexual assault cases and the culture in the forces you called out in that report? You're now the Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces. Will that be an issue that will be a priority for you as Governor-General?
I have to say I haven't followed developments, and I wasn't in a position as a citizen to follow the developments with the same level of scrutiny than I did when I issued that report. The report speaks for itself. As to whether there have been initiatives, both formal and informal, this is out in the public domain. I don't have particular insight.
Si je vous permettez, just to add, 47 of the 48 recommendations of Madame Arbour report have been implemented. There's one that is outstanding, which is one of the core, I referred to it obliquely in my remarks, which is the change to military tribunals, military justice, and that is before Parliament in Bill C-11, and it is an absolute priority. It's been from the start, which is why the government introduced it, and we will put it in place. Yeah.
My follow-up is to the Prime Minister. Premier Smith is in town later this week for the Canada Strong and Free conference. Do you have plans to meet with her and discuss the possible upcoming referendum?
That's funny. I thought she was in town to meet me because, yes, there are plans to meet. And if that's good, if she's here, she can take in other activities. But I'm sure the highlight of her visit to the great city of Ottawa will be a side visit to Nepean, my constituency, but also we're having a meeting that's been settled. I can't remember if it's Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, but it's been arranged. I very much look forward to seeing
Will
her.
referendum talk be on the agenda for you?
That was your follow-up.
Next question. Prochaine question.
Yeah.
Oui, bonjour. Hélène Buzetti, les Coop de l'information. Ma première question est pour vous, Madame Arbour. Écoutez, vous avez eu une carrière absolument extraordinaire. Monsieur Carney en a parlé. Vous êtes connue comme étant une femme de terrain. Vous aimez l'action. Vous avez même un peu écourté votre séjour à la Cour suprême parce que l'appel du terrain était trop fort. Alors, on se demande quand même, qu'est-ce que vous croyez que vous allez réaliser dans un poste qui, il faut quand même le dire, implique beaucoup de serrage de main, de donner des médailles et de partager des petits fours?
Ah, mais ça, vous avez fait référence à la partie au bonheur de la fonction.
Oui.
Je pensais que vous alliez me demander comment je vais m'acquitter des tâches plus sobres et plus sérieuses. Je vais m'acquitter de toutes ces fonctions-là avec beaucoup d'enthousiasme. Vous savez, les gens m'ont posé les mêmes questions quand j'ai accepté de devenir juge à la Cour suprême du Canada, après avoir passé 3 ans dans des zones de guerre. Pour les journalistes qui sont ici, qui connaissent bien le terrain, on devient facilement accro à l'adrénaline qui vient avec ce genre de travail. Alors, j'ai connu les deux. Aujourd'hui, je suis extrêmement, non seulement très sereine, mais très enthousiasmée à l'idée de pouvoir servir le Canada dans cette nouvelle fonction.
Ma suivie, ce serait un peu la même question pour vous, Monsieur Carney. Oui. Vous avez parlé de ce profil professionnel extraordinaire. Que voyez-vous dans ce profil qui servira la cause du gouverneur général? Est-ce que vous voyez une mission particulière pour Mme Arbour dans cette fonction?
Merci, Mme Buzetti, pour votre question. C'est une question très importante, mais c'est difficile de dire, c'est pas approprié, selon moi, de dire une mission particulière, parce que pendant un mandat d'un gouverneur général, il y a divers aspects anticipés, mais pas anticipés, non anticipés, en même temps. Premier point. Deuxième, il faut le dire, que c'est important de serrer des mains, de donner des médailles, de pleurer avec des gens de temps en temps. Ça c'est un aspect du Canada, de célébrer notre pays. C'est vachement important, selon moi, cet aspect du rôle. Il faut être humain. Troisième point. Il y a un rôle constitutionnel très important. On observe de temps en temps ce rôle pendant des périodes de prorogation, par exemple, des gouvernements minoritaires, d'autres. C'est difficile d'anticiper tous les potentiels défis ou crises constitutionnelles qui pourraient dérouler pendant un mandat. Alors, il faut avoir quelqu'un, et nous avons la chance maintenant, il faut le dire, mais quelqu'un de jugement, de clarté morale dans le poste. Et finalement, pour moi, j'aurai de la chance d'avoir des conversations profondes avec Mme Arbour, privées, sur des sujets qui impliquent le Canada, ici au Canada et à travers le monde, à un point échelonné pour notre pays.
We'll have time for one more question.
Yes, David Aiken, Global News. Good afternoon, and congratulations, Madame Arbour. I would like to ask, your resume was awfully impressive, and the Prime Minister certainly finds it impressive. And yet at times there have been political parties in this country who've taken issue with your work. And I'm going to reference the comment in 2008 of the Treasury Board President at the time, Vic Taves, who, after you concluded your work with the UNHCR, called you, and I'm quoting from his words in the House of Commons, disgusting. And just yesterday, a senior aide to former Prime Minister Harper, Howard Anglin, also former Chief of Staff to Jason Kenney, tweeted out, anybody but Arbour. So there's a point here, is there's conservatives in this country who took issue with you as a, quote, judicial activist and so on, and human rights. And I wondered how you might bridge or seek to make bridges with conservatives who might not be so happy with your appointment. And I think you were probably, Prime Minister, you were probably at the Bank of Canada at the time. I wonder if you'd taken notice of Mr. Taves' comments and what you think about conservatives who didn't seem to have much respect for Ms. Arbour's work at the UNHCR. Madame?
Well, I can tell you that, as I said before, we live in a country where there's a great free space for expression of contrary views, even at times expressed in very robust fashion, and I have immense respect for that process. I will reach out not only to those who agree with me. The kind of cheerleading mode, I think, is not always conducive to change and to progress. I will reach out to anybody who wishes to engage with me, to debate, to discuss. I will listen, and I hope in due course that I will manage to persuade those, particularly those who may doubt my integrity, that I'm not sure I could do much more to try to persuade them otherwise on the basis of what I've done before. But going forward, I will engage.
Thank you.
I'll make three observations. One is, sorry, don't want to shortchange you, David.
Right.
The first is that I think history has shown that the judgments of the UNHCR at the time, how correct they were, the crimes against humanity and others that were addressed. The first observation. The second is I don't want to extend into a partisan characterization of this. This is an institution that belongs to all Canadians, all political parties, but truly all Canadians. All Canadians today and in the future too, because what we do with the institutions we serve resonates down through the years, and it's part of what I referred to in my remarks in French about the example and how the institutional change that Madame Arbour has brought isn't just about the institution, but the norms and the standards that have changed. And my third observation is that the sun is shining. It's spring. It's a time of hope, confidence, dignity, and a bright future for our country. Thank you.
And perhaps I'll close with a question. This is from Madame Arbour, sort of a big picture. Think about things. You were born in Montreal. Louis Saint-Laurent was the Prime Minister. Queen Elizabeth II was about to appoint the first ever Canadian Governor-General, Vincent Massey. You'll be the first Governor-General to be appointed by a monarch other than Queen Elizabeth, which is quite remarkable. We've had the Bill of Rights in your lifetime. The Charter has come in your lifetime. I wondered if you, and we're now looking at a Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces who's a Quebecer, and the Chief of Defense Staff is also a Quebec woman. It's quite a series of changes in your lifetime, and I wonder if you'd care to reflect on the change in leadership here in Canada through those years, and if you have some thoughts about, was the Charter a bigger deal than the Bill of Rights? I caution you'll get in trouble with Conservatives on that answer, but go ahead.
Well, you know, I'm not going to get into trouble right now because I'm going to give myself, if you'll allow me, the next few weeks before I actually assume my functions to reflect on many of this historical trajectory, where we came from, where we are today. I'm much more interested also in where we're going and what's ahead of us. But please just give me time to reflect on all that. And I hope to have something a little more fully baked for you in the future.
Merci.
Thank you. This puts end to our
Thank you
press conference. C'est ce qui met fin à notre conférence de presse. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. We'll go this way, and we'll just follow these.